On today's episode, I am reacting to the Monday Night Football game, the Saints versus the Chargers, plus all my top waiver wire targets for Week 6, coming right up. And what's up, everyone? You're listening to the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast for Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. Now, I'm Chick, your host, and thank you so much for listening today. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you'd like to share our podcast, you can find us over on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. If you'd like to watch us, you can watch us over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So, please support the show and hit subscribe so you don't miss any more episodes. And on today's episode, we're talking about all the waiver wire pickups for Week 6. But before we do that, let's talk about that Monday Night Football game. What a great game to have on Monday night. It was one of those games where if you're a football fan, you're super excited. If you were a Alvin Kamara fantasy owner, you were super stressed out. I know I was. If you guys listened to the podcast on Monday, I was in my main league. I had benched Miles Sanders for James Robinson. And obviously, Miles Sanders had the better game. He had 14 more points than James Robinson. And I need Alvin Kamara to do Alvin Kamara things. So he's been averaging a crap load of points the last few games. And in my gut, I just felt like this could be his worst fantasy performance. I don't know what about it. Every time I'm losing in a game, I need to have like 15 to 20 points. I always assume I'm going to lose. But, Alvin Kamara, he came through again. He had a massive catch in the end of the game to win me my match this week. And, the Saints, they won this game 30-27. But, the story here is Justin Herbert. He continues to show why he was a first-round pick. And, he was the number one fantasy quarterback this week. He ended up having, 264 yards and 4 passing touchdowns. Just a great game from this rookie. And, I understand it was a hard decision for the Chargers to go with, Herbert and bench, Tyrod Taylor. But this is the right decision. When you have a rookie that you spend a high draft pick on, you have to make these decisions. You have to make these hard decisions, and they're making the right decision. This guy is looking like he belongs in the NFL. So, he's definitely making me definitely a believer in him. But then on the other side of the ball, there was Drew Brees. Drew Brees, he continues to struggle. He's not the Drew Brees that we're accustomed to. He did have 2 touchdowns. He had a quarterback sneak, and then he had a passing touchdown to Jared Cook. But the Saints game was very frustrating to watch because I don't understand why they are so fascinated with Taysom Hill. I understand he's a guy that when you bring him in, he gives you a complete different outlook on the plays and everything. But I just feel like every time Taysom Hill's in the game, I feel like the defense knows he's getting the ball because he rarely does read options where he hands the ball off to Alvin Kamara or Latavius Murray or whatever. But it seems like Sean Payton just has this infatuation with Taysom Hill, and I don't understand it. And if you're a Saints, if you're a fan of the Saints and you're listening to this podcast, you're watching on YouTube, especially if you're listening and watching on YouTube, leave a comment, let me know what you think about Taysom Hill, because it seems to me that even Saints fans were getting annoyed at the fact that Taysom Hill continues to be played. And the funny thing about what happened on Twitter, if you were on Twitter last night and watching the Saints game, so the Taysom Hill was trending. And I don't know if, these tweets obviously still going to be there, but do yourself a favor and look and just search Taysom Hill in your search engine for Twitter, and you're going to be laughing because there's so many people out there that are just continuously I can't believe how many funny people are out there. And I know social media brings a lot of just divisiveness and everything like that, but there's so many funny people out there, and it was just funny to listen or to read all the tweets and just all the videos and all the GIFs and all that were being used. It was funny to me. But Taysom Hill, he almost ruined my fantasy night because I was down by 17.87 points in my main league, and I had Alvin Kamara. So I figured, okay, Alvin Kamara is projected to get 22.9 points. So I'm assuming he's gonna have a good game. But then you look at the game as it went on, the Saints were struggling on offense, and they kept on putting Latavius Murray in, and I don't understand why Sean Payton was getting so cute with the offense. It just seemed like they weren't. You don't have Michael Thomas, right? But the offense runs through Alvin Kamara. When Michael Thomas is not playing, Alvin Kamara is the go-to guy. And I felt like for some reason it wasn't in the game plan. And the Chargers are really bad against receiving running backs, so they give up a lot of receptions to the running back position. And Alvin Kamara, that's his bread and butter. That's what he does. And I just didn't understand. And when he got close to the goal line, I really needed Alvin Kamara touchdown, and Drew Brees had his rushing touchdown, and then later on in the game, Taysom Hill had his touchdown. But I don't know. I just feel like you have these massive games from Alvin Kamara, and then you have a game like today or last night that just doesn't, seem that way. But he still scored 19.9 fantasy points, so you can't be mad. But overall, I won. I kept my record to be 5-0 in my main league. So hopefully, if you guys had Alvin Kamara or somebody on the Saints or whatnot, if you had Emmanuel Sanders, you're probably pretty happy with that as well, because Emmanuel Sanders had a massive game. I mean, he had 12 receptions for 122 yards and 14 targets. So he definitely showed up. He's been the guy that they're hoping he would be when the Saints got him. But good game from Emmanuel Sanders. And on the other side of the ball, Mike Williams. Mike Williams, it's hard to explain Mike Williams because the dude is a massive human being, very athletic. It seems like every catch that he makes is always a 50-50 ball where he's jumping and levitating in the air and catching these balls. And it's interesting to see, like, nobody probably played Mike Williams in their fantasy lineup because there was a chance that he wasn't going to play on Monday night, and then he did, and he had a massive game. But like, what's good about Mike Williams is that he is the GOAT. He's the number 2 in that offense. So you have Keenan Allen, obviously you have Hunter Henry, but Mike Williams is the guy that he's such a mismatch. He's such a massive receiver that he definitely, the only thing that keeps him from being elite is the fact that he just can't stay on the field. But Mike Williams showed up tonight, and I'll talk about him a little bit later in the podcast. But when it comes to the running back position, Joshua Kelly, he really didn't do anything tonight. He was pretty quiet. Justin Jackson had the bigger game. He had 14.4 PPR points, but I had a lot of questions about Justin Jackson this past week about who to start and sit, and I always stay conservative when it comes to waiver wire claims after a player goes down due to injury. So obviously Austin Eckler went down, and so Justin Jackson takes that number 2 running back slot because Joshua Kelly is now the starter. And I don't want to give advice to start a running back like that unless I know how his usage is going to be. So the same thing that happened when Nyheim Hines was the number 1 waiver claim back earlier in the season. The next week he did nothing. He had I think 2 PPR points. So if you're hoping Hines was going to get you a safe floor, he didn't do anything for you. And then the same thing with Dion Lewis. When Saquon Barkley went down, Dion Lewis was one of the number 1 waiver claims for that week. And then you played him the next week, he did nothing for you. And then Wayne Gallman, and then you had Devontae Freeman. So you had all these other players. So when it comes to Justin Jackson, it was hard to have you play somebody in your lineup that I was unsure, because I don't want to be the analyst that tells you to play somebody and then they do nothing and then you lose your week. So I like to see what happens. I'd rather have the points on my bench knowing the utilization of Justin Jackson and then feel confident going forward, because it looks like going forward Justin Jackson looks like the more dynamic running back because he can catch out of the backfield. He was running between the tackles on Monday night. So I think now, knowing his usage, I think he's going to be a good running back going forward. But it's always safer to have that, unless you're desperate, unless you're dealing with people that are injured, if you're dealing with, just the everything going on with like the COVID stuff. Like, I get it, but if I was able to have him on my bench and kind of wait and see, that was the best option for me. But I think that he's going to be a good guy going forward. But overall, a good Monday night game. Came down to the wire, came down to, the Chargers. I mean, they had a chance to win the game, missed field goal, went to overtime, and the Saints did what they needed to do. And it just one of those things where, this is 2 weeks in a row that the Chargers lost in the fourth quarter, but this is growing pains for Justin Herbert, and he'll end up being a good quarterback. But overall, the Saints were able to win this game, so a good Monday night game overall. And now going to some updated news. On Monday, Dalvin Cook underwent an MRI on his groin. So it looks like it came back with good news. Coach Zimmer said that the MRI went well, that in my translation of this, that he had a mild, muscle strain to his adductor, his groin area, the muscle. And what that tells me is that he will likely miss this week. I know they're going to look at the practice reports to kind of see how he does, but I can't imagine him having a groin issue and then trying to play. I know Kareem Hunt was dealing with a groin injury the last couple of weeks, and he's played and been very effective. But, I don't know the severity of, obviously Kareem Hunt's was a lot different. When Dalvin Cook came back to into the game on Sunday night, he came back for one play. You can tell he wasn't healthy. So I just don't know if Dalvin Cook should play. I think that because they have a bye week in week 7, I think they should let him sit and let him rest up and then play him after the bye week in week 8. So Dalvin Cook, still don't know the playing status of him this week, but my guess is early on that he's not going to play. But like I said, he could have a great week of practice. You could feel 100% and then play on Sunday. And they have a juicy matchup too. They have the Atlanta Falcons, so that definitely is going to be a good matchup. Whoever you're going to play, if you're going to play Alexander Mattison or you're going to play Dalvin Cook, it's a good matchup. With that being said, let's go ahead and go into the top waiver claims for Week 6. I'm going to start off at quarterback. If you're in a 2-quarterback league, Andy Dalton is the guy you have to grab. He's owned obviously in 0% of leagues. He is a guy that is in a good offense. He definitely probably even the best backup quarterback right now in the NFL. And then you have all the weapons with Gallup, Cooper, Lamb, Zeke, Schultz. Like, you have weapons around you. So I'm really excited to kind of see what Andy Dalton does with this type of weapon, to his arsenal. But if you're in a 2-quarterback league and you had Dak Prescott and you need a quarterback, you need to pay up. I don't know, how much fab you have, but if you have whatever fab you have, go hard for him, because you especially if you had Dak Prescott, you need to go and pay up for him. He's going to be a guy that we don't know exactly how the offense is going to look, but you can't go without Andy Dalton if you're a Dak Prescott owner. And then going on to the next quarterback, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick, he continues to be prove everybody wrong. He continues to be that streamer every week. I think he continues that trend this week. We know that he's a short-term rental. We know Tua is wanting to start, and it's just a matter of when it's going to happen. But right now, just ride that Ryan Fitzpatrick train. If you need a streamer, and this week he has a great matchup against the New York Jets, so I think that he continues to be a good option. He's going to be a very cheap option on your waiver wire claim if you have a fab budget. He's not somebody you have to spend a lot of money for, but he definitely is a streaming option for Week 6. And then I added this after the Monday night game, Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert deserves to be stashed on your bench. He was the number 1 fantasy quarterback for Week 5. He is 35% owned, so he does have a higher percentage, but I do think that if he's there and you're iffy on your court, if say you have Matt Ryan or or Drew Brees, somebody that's kind of on that QB1 fringe, I would grab Justin Herbert, because it's nice to be able to have options just in case based on matchups. And then moving on to the running back position, obviously the number 1 waiver claim the whole week, right, is Alexander Mattison. I think Alexander Mattison, especially if you're a Dalvin Cook owner, you need to grab Alexander Mattison. Now he's owned in 41.6% of leagues, so there's more than, obviously almost 60% of Dalvin Cook owners or people in general know about Dalvin Cook's history. And like, I'm a Dalvin Cook owner in my main league. I drafted Alexander Mattison. He's just stashed on my bench. I'm never going to drop him for reasons like this, because Alexander Mattison is one of the only running backs that can go right into a starting role and produce like Dalvin Cook. He's not the same running back. He's definitely not as elite, but he will produce with the numbers that you need, because he had 112 yards on Sunday night. So, and that's playing a half. So I think that Alexander Mattison. Now I know we're not going to know of Dalvin Cook's status for Week 6, but regardless, if you're a Dalvin Cook owner, you need to pick up Alexander Mattison, because you want to be able to have that seamless transition. Because like for me, I have Alvin Kamara. So if Alvin Kamara goes down, Latavius Murray is not going to, he's going to be a starting running back, obviously, but he's not going to give you the same upside and ceiling that Alvin Kamara does. So I feel like Alexander Madison is that safe, seamless transition where you're not going to see a huge drop off. And then I just mentioned him during the Monday night game. I think Justin Jackson needs to be picked up. If he's not picked up already, he's owned in 47% of leagues. He had a great showing. I think a lot of people, the reason why he wasn't higher owned is because I think people want to wait and see how he did, and now I think he will be one of those number one waiver claims for week 6. Those are the only 2 major running backs for this week, and obviously there's names to throw out like Dearness Johnson. So Dearness Johnson was the guy that was being picked up last week because of the Nick Chubb injury, and now that we see the kind of how he's been utilized, he was supposed to be kind of a streamer option for week 5, but he didn't really do much, so kind of disappointing. But I think that with Kareem Hunt, I think they're going to start, trying to implement both of them. But definitely another guy that you should try to pick up if he's available. And then now going to the wide receiver position, the number one wide receiver for this week to claim is Chase Claypool. Now he's only owned in 9% of leagues. On Sunday he had 7 receptions on 11 targets and 110 yards and 3 touchdowns. Then he added a rushing touchdown. Now obviously you want to have, he's that new shiny toy that's on the waiver wire. But you have to be very realistic on what to expect. You're going to probably pay up for him. You're probably going to see people spend about 20-25% of their fab budget on Chase Claypool. But you have to realize, Juju's still there. Deontay Johnson went out early in that game. So obviously that helped Claypool. So if you're talking about target shares between Juju, Deontay Johnson, you got James Washington, obviously James Conner catches passes, and you got Eric Ebron. Does Chase Claypool have the upside like he did on Sunday? Now, obviously, if Deontay Johnson's not healthy and there's other players that are banged up, yes, he's an option to have. And if you have the room on your bench and you need somebody to have like that boom bust type of player, it's hard not to see him not be implemented more in the offense based on what we saw on Sunday. But the opportunity was there for Chase Claypool, so he made do with what he had, and he showed up. So he definitely is worth adding. And then now after Monday night game, I think Mike Williams, he should be added. He's owned in 3% of leagues. He had a huge Monday night game. He had 2 touchdowns. Keenan Allen went out early. He's another guy that benefited from injuries. That Keenan Allen went out early on the Monday night due to a back injury. He never returned after he went out. So Keenan Allen, we have no idea exactly how long he'll be out if it's just this game, but it looks like the longer the game went on, the likelihood of him coming back in the game was less likely. So Mike Williams, if he's healthy, he needs to be a guy to be added because he definitely will give you the targets. But the only thing I did see was at the very end of the Monday night game when he got tackled. So that great tackle by Marcus Lattimore at the end of the game to avoid them getting a first down. So he got tackled awkwardly. So Mike Williams came up kind of grabbing his ankle. It looked like he might have had a mild high ankle sprain, but there wasn't anything that I saw news-wise that on the recording of this podcast that I saw. So he may be okay, but Mike Williams may be a guy that you'll be able to add if you need some insurance, So with that being the case, the next guy is Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs he came back from injury, had a massive game. He had over 100 yards, but he only had he only had 2 receptions on Sunday. But he is owned in 49% of the league, so it's one of those things where he may not be available. The thing about Henry Ruggs is that he is that home run type of receiver. He's like in the sense of like he's like Mecole Hardman or Sammy Watkins or like even Tyreek Hill, is that they may not get a lot of volume, but that one play could help because he could get a 50-yard touchdown. And if you're in a PPR league, that could be a massive boost for your roster. But we have to see how he starts to get more back in this offense because obviously Darren Waller is the target. He's the lead target share. Henry Ruggs, like once he starts developing more into a every down type of wide receiver, obviously he plays in the slot and his speed is what he's known for. But I do think Henry Ruggs is a guy that is a boom bust. I think that he's worthy of being on your bench, but you got to have expectations that are really, just normal for him because I don't know if he's gonna be a guy that you can rely on every single week as of right now. And then we got wide receiver Travis Fulgham. He had a great game on Sunday against the Steelers. He's not owned in any leagues. He's owned in 0% of leagues, so he's definitely gonna be available in your leagues. And He's had 2 good games in a row. Carson Wentz's number 1 target. He has 16 targets in the last 2 weeks and 2 touchdowns. So he definitely is being used. But just like Chase Claypool, I probably would maybe put in a claim for Fulgham, maybe for $1-2, just something super small, because once Alshon Jeffrey comes back, once Deshaun Jackson comes back, once Jalen Reagor comes back, then you got Zach Ertz. I mean, I don't know where he fits. I don't know if he's a guy that you should go and claim, but he may be a guy that could have some upside for you just in case players like Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson can't stay healthy. And that's another guy that you need to pick up is Alshon Jeffrey, because right now he's only owned in 16% of leagues. And my assumption is that Alshon Jeffrey is going to go right into the number 1, the number 1 receiver slot for the Eagles, because they have nobody, and he is a number 1 wide receiver. So, I think Travis Fulgham is a nice add, but I'll put in a $1, $2 claim on him. But then you got to look at who you have to drop. Are you going to drop somebody that's better upside than Fulgham? So that's the thing you have to determine. If you're really hurting your roster and you're playing deeper leagues, he's an add, obviously. But I think that you have to know exactly what you're getting when you pay the money for a player like this, knowing that there's other people that are going to go right into, eat into his target share. And then Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver Laviska Shenault Jr., he's owned in 32% of leagues. As of right now, he's the leading target share receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He has 15% of the target share. Now, I know DJ Chark has missed time, and then when DJ Chark went out on Sunday, he was obviously the number 1 wide receiver. So he definitely needs to be rostered in a lot of leagues because he gives you a good option. I know he's not the number 1 because DJ Chark is, but he's the number 2 and he's leading in targets. So I think that Laviska Shenault needs to be added. And then on top of that, his teammate Keelan Cole needs to be added as well, because we don't know the status of DJ Chark as of right now. If he does have to miss more time, I think those 2 wide receivers, Laviska Shenault and Keelan Cole, are going to benefit from that. So definitely a must add in your league. And then this is a guy I dropped this last week and he ended up having a big game. I think my last wide receiver to add for this week is Preston Williams. He's owned in 38% of leagues. Now he finally had a 100-yard game and a touchdown. The Miami Dolphins play in a pass-heavy offense. I was getting frustrated with him because obviously I was starting him in our league. We start 3 wide receivers, and he's my 3rd wide receiver that I add to my lineup every week, and he just wasn't doing it. So I felt like he was hurting my upside of my roster. So I dropped him for Laviska Shenault, which obviously they both had decent games, so I wasn't mad about that. And I picked up T. Higgins as well, but I don't know if I want to trust Preston Williams yet. There's so many options on the, Devontae Parker obviously is going to get most of the targets. Mike Gesicki, you got Myles Gaskin. So I want to keep my eyes on Preston Williams. I don't think anybody in my personal league is going to pick him up, but he may be a guy that you could quietly get on your roster, maybe not to spend any fab on, depending on how active your league mates are. But Preston Williams is a guy that you could add as well. And then going to tight end this week is very slim. Most of these guys are probably already owned, but Dalton Schultz is a guy that could be added to your roster. If you're ready to thin out tight end or dealing with the bye week, he may be a guy that you could play as a streamer. Maybe a guy you could keep, for the rest of the season. But we don't know how Andy Dalton's going to be with his new arsenal of weapons. So that's yet to be determined. So I don't know if I want to play Dalton Schultz until I see what Andy Dalton does with those receivers and the tight end and the running back. So, but he's an add if he's available, if you need somebody for a bye week fill-in. And then Eric Ebron, he continues to be implemented to the Steelers offense more and more. He has 6 targets on Sunday, so he definitely has a safe floor, I believe. He did have a fumble, which cost him a couple points, but I think Eric Ebron's an add, as a streamer as well. And then this guy here, my last tight end for the week is Gerald Everett. Tyler Higbee is a player that I had picked as a breakout candidate for tight end. I feel like what he did later on in the season of, how he finished 2019 was enough of a sample size to think that, okay, even with Gerald Everett healthy and playing, Tyler Higbee was the guy that they're going to, because they play a lot of 12 personnel, so they play a lot of 2 tight ends. And then it really decreased like Cooper Kupp's upside, but you saw Tyler Higbee go off in the last 4 weeks of last season. And then now this season, it just seems like Gerald Everett is now kind of going back to being in that role. I'm not saying that you have to pick him up. I'm not saying that you're going to start him over Tyler Higbee, but he's just a name that you want to kind of keep your eyes on, because he did have 4 receptions for 90 yards on Sunday, and he outproduced Tyler Higbee. So I do think that he's a name that you don't have to pick up as of right now, unless you're like in a really 16-team league and you're in a deep league. But I'm just putting his name out there just so you guys know that there's an option there. He's not going to be available. He's going to be available in a lot of your leagues. So definitely a sneaky pickup if you need to. And my top defensive streamers for this week, my number 1 defense right now is Miami. They are continue to solidify that defense. They're getting after the quarterback. They're getting sacks. They're getting turnovers. So they're being well coached on defense. I do think Miami's a good option this week. They play the Jets. So regardless of who they are, the Jets are playing at quarterback, if it's Darnold or Flacco, I think that this defense can get after it. So I think the Miami Dolphins are a good pickup for this week. And then another good pickup is the Washington football team. They got Chase Young back. They play the Giants this week. So I do think that Washington could be a good streamer option if you're in the business of streaming defenses in your league. But that's it. Those are all of my top waiver wire, pickups for week 6. Hopefully you guys are able to, fill up your roster, because this is how you win championships in your fantasy league. You have to be very active on the waiver wire, knowing when to drop players. I understand like there are certain players like Brandon Cook, someone dropped, and then he had a massive game. I understand it's hard to do that, but sometimes you have to cut bait with some of these players. And if they end up going off on someone else's roster, I mean, it is what it is. But I think at times you don't ever know if someone like Chase Claypool or Henry Ruggs is a guy that, wins you your fantasy league. So I do think that it's just important to stay active with the waiver wire and be careful with your fab budget. Don't just blow unless you're in any, you need Andy Dalton in a 2-quarterback league, and maybe if you're a Dalvin Cook owner, and you need to get Alexander Madison. It's one of those things you have to be aggressive, because you want to make sure that you're able to continue on with your team on how they're playing and all that stuff. So I definitely just be careful on kind of how you spend on your fab budget. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. This week is a little different, just because now we have a game tonight. So we have the Titans versus the Bills. So as of right now, that game is still on. Things can change, but as of right now, you got Josh Allen, you got Derrick Henry, you got AJ Brown. Hopefully, if you have any of those players, they're going to be able to play, and then hopefully you'll be able to win your fantasy matchup. So if you are relying on some of these players, leave a comment. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment below and tell me what you need to do to win, because we have our very first Tuesday night football game, so that's super exciting. But because of that, things are going to be shifted around a little bit. Remember, when it comes to the waiver wires, the claims won't go through until Thursday morning. So you still put your waiver claims in, but it's not going to be processed, because obviously the Tuesday game has to be, done and completed. And obviously there could be waiver claims by, from what I understand, from how these leagues are doing everything, waiver claims will still be delayed a little bit. But I don't want to mess with that. I'm still going to put claims in tonight, just so I know that they're in there. So with that being the case, hope that you're able to get the players this week that you want. But like I said, thank you so much for listening today. Please like and share and comment on the podcast, on the YouTube video. On next episode, I'm going to go through all the week 5 matchups or the week 6 matchups. All my starts and sits. That should be out with the week being a little different. That should be out on Friday the latest. But just hit the bell and hit subscribe so you know when that video gets popped up. When I download it or when I upload it. So like I said, don't forget to hit subscribe. And then if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at the Gridiron Pod. We're on Instagram at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So thank you. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening today. And then we'll see you all in the next episode. Take care.